Picture this, the early 1930s, the height of the Great Depression, and amidst the despair, a love story is born. But not just any love story, this is the tale of Bonnie and Clyde. A couple whose love for one another was only surpassed by their love for danger and rebellion. They were the epitome of the word outlaw, their names etched in the annals of history as one of the most notorious couples of all time. Their story, a twisted love affair that would lead them down a path of infamy, filled with high-speed chases, daring bank robberies, and a crime spree that would captivate the nation and keep law enforcement on their toes. It's a tale that has all the ingredients of a blockbuster: drama, romance, and suspense, all wrapped up in a package of lawlessness and rebellion. Stay tuned as we dive deeper into the lives of these infamous outlaws. Our story takes us back to the humble beginnings of Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow. Born in the early 20th century in the dusty heartlands of Texas, both Bonnie and Clyde were raised in poverty-stricken families, a reality that would later play a significant role in their decisions to turn to a life of crime. Bonnie Elizabeth Parker was born in 1910. A bright girl with a love for creative writing, she had dreams of becoming a famous movie actress. But life had other plans for her. Orphaned at 4, she was raised by her grandmother in a small rundown house in Cement City. Clyde Chestnut Barrow, born in 1909, was the 5th of 7 children. His family lived a hand-to-mouth existence, surviving off the meager earnings from farming. Life was harsh, and Clyde, even as a young boy, was no stranger to hardship and struggle. The Great Depression of the 1930s only intensified their struggles. Jobs were scarce, and the economic hardships of the time pushed many to the brink. This was the world that Bonnie and Clyde grew up in, a world where survival meant doing whatever it took. Despite their hardships, both Bonnie and Clyde were not born criminals. Bonnie was known to be a good student, and Clyde was said to have a soft spot for music, particularly the guitar. But their circumstances, coupled with the harsh realities of their time, pushed them down a path they may not have chosen otherwise. It's important to remember that behind the notorious figures of Bonnie and Clyde were 2 young individuals, shaped by their environment and circumstances. They were products of their time, driven to desperation by a society that offered them no other alternatives. But how did these 2 youngsters from Texas end up as America's most wanted? In a twist of fate, or perhaps destiny, Bonnie and Clyde's paths crossed. It was the height of the Great Depression, a time when the nation was steeped in economic hardship and despair. This was the setting where 2 individuals, Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow, found one another. Bonnie, a vivacious and ambitious woman, was working as a waitress, her dreams of becoming a movie star seemingly out of reach. Clyde, on the other hand, was a charming and restless man who, despite his best intentions, found himself repeatedly on the wrong side of the law. Their meeting was far from a fairy tale. No grand ballroom, no sweeping orchestra, just a simple introduction at a mutual friend's house. Yet in that moment, something sparked. A connection that transcended the mundanity of their surroundings, a bond that would come to define them and in turn define an era. They found in each other a kindred spirit, a shared defiance against the system that had let them down. Their relationship was passionate, intense, their love for one another as fierce as their disdain for the status quo. In Bonnie, Clyde found a partner, a confidant, someone who saw beyond his criminal past and believed in the man he could be. In Clyde, Bonnie found an escape, a chance to break free from the shackles of her ordinary life, to be part of a story greater than herself. As their bond deepened, so too did their ambitions. They began to dream of a life beyond the dreary confines of their current existence, a life of adventure, of freedom, of infamy. They imagined a world where they were not just survivors but victors, not just partners but legends. Little did they know their love affair would soon become a national sensation. Their names would be whispered in hushed tones, their faces splashed across newspapers. Bonnie and Clyde, a couple bound not just by love, but by a shared destiny that would catapult them into the annals of history as one of the most notorious duos of all time. With the lure of fast money and the thrill of the chase, Bonnie and Clyde embarked on a crime spree. It was the early 1930s, and the United States was in the throes of the Great Depression. Banks were failing left, right, and centre, and the public's trust in these institutions was at an all-time low. This was the perfect storm for Bonnie and Clyde, who were ready to make their mark on the world. Their first bank robbery was in Lawrence, Kansas. Armed with charm, bravado, and a loaded gun, they walked away with a few $1,000s. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about the thrill, the rush of adrenaline, the feeling of being on top of the world. For Bonnie and Clyde, this was just the beginning. They continued their spree across the central United States, robbing banks in Oklahoma, Missouri, and Texas. Each robbery was bolder, more audacious than the last. They were fearless, reckless even, but they were also clever. They knew how to evade the law, how to stay one step ahead. But their audaciousness was attracting attention, and not just from the public. Law enforcement was growing increasingly concerned. Bonnie and Clyde weren't just robbers, they were murderers. They had killed police officers, bank employees, innocent bystanders. The FBI was called in and a manhunt began. The duo became public enemy number one, their faces plastered on wanted posters across the country. But Bonnie and Clyde seemed almost oblivious to the danger. They were infatuated with each other, with the thrill of their life on the run. They were living a romanticized version of the outlaw life, one where they were the heroes, not the villains. They wrote poems, took photos, and even sent letters to newspapers, reveling in their notoriety. Their audacious crimes were making headlines, but the law was closing in. Bonnie and Clyde were on borrowed time, and they knew it, but they were determined to go down in a blaze of glory, to leave their mark on the world, no matter the cost. Their crime spree had begun, and it was only a matter of time before it would end. Despite their cleverness and audacity, Bonnie and Clyde couldn't outrun justice forever. The final act of this infamous duo's story unfolded as a series of escalating encounters with the law, each more dangerous than the last. Their audacious bank heists had made them notorious figures, their faces plastered on every newspaper. Yet they continued to elude capture, their reckless bravado seeming to make them untouchable. The turning point came with a series of major heists that drew the attention of the highest levels of law enforcement. They weren't just robbing banks anymore, they were challenging the very institutions of power. These daring acts were accompanied by violent shootouts, as Bonnie and Clyde's gang clashed with the police in a desperate bid to maintain their freedom. Each confrontation saw them slip through the fingers of the law, their legend growing with each narrow escape. But the law was closing in. The authorities, frustrated and humiliated, were determined to put an end to Bonnie and Clyde's crime spree. They assembled a team of the best lawmen in the country, armed with the latest technology and a burning desire to restore order. This team, under the direction of former Texas Ranger Frank Hamer, set a trap for Bonnie and Clyde, using one of their gang members as bait. The pivotal ambush took place on a quiet country road in Bienville Parish, Louisiana. Bonnie and Clyde, driving their stolen Ford, were unaware of the danger lurking ahead. As they approached the ambush site, the lawmen opened fire without warning. Caught off guard and outnumbered, Bonnie and Clyde stood no chance. The car was riddled with bullets, and the couple, who had lived and loved so fiercely, died just as fiercely. Their bodies were found slumped in the bullet-riddled car, their crime spree finally at an end. In a blaze of bullets, the saga of Bonnie and Clyde came to a tragic end. They had dared to challenge the system, to live life on their own terms, and in the end they paid the ultimate price. The tale of Bonnie and Clyde has captivated the world for nearly a century. As we delve into the legacy left by this infamous duo, we can't help but notice their impact on popular culture. The narrative of Bonnie and Clyde, the lovers turned outlaws, has been told and retold in countless forms. From films and television series to music and literature, they have been immortalized as romantic rebels, defying society and living by their own rules. Yet, as much as their story has been romanticized, it's essential to remember that Bonnie and Clyde were not heroes. They were criminals, born out of a time of desperation and hardship. Their story is a product of the Great Depression, an era marked by poverty, unemployment, and a widespread feeling of hopelessness. It's a story that reflects the bleak reality of their time. Their life of crime, filled with bank robberies, murders, and a series of run-ins with the law, captivated the nation's attention in the 1930s. The public's fascination with them was, and still is, a testament to the power of media and the allure of the bad boy and bad girl image they embodied. The romanticization of Bonnie and Clyde also points to an intriguing aspect of human nature, our tendency to root for the underdog, albeit in this case a rather dangerous one. Despite their criminal activities, many saw them as victims of their circumstances, symbols of rebellion against a system that seemed to have failed them. But let's not forget the lessons learned from their lives. Bonnie and Clyde's story serves as a cautionary tale about the consequences of choices made in desperation. It reminds us of the importance of empathy and understanding, especially towards those who are products of their environment and circumstances. Their story challenges us to question societal norms and to take a closer look at the factors that drive people to lead lives of crime. Furthermore, their narrative forces us to reflect on the role of media in shaping public perception. The media's portrayal of Bonnie and Clyde, from the sensational newspaper headlines of the 30s to the glamorous Hollywood depictions, played a significant role in romanticizing their story. It begs the question, how much power does the media hold in shaping our understanding of history and reality? In conclusion, the legacy of Bonnie and Clyde is a complex one. It's a tale of love, crime, and desperation, deeply rooted in a specific historical context. It's a story that continues to fascinate and intrigue us, even almost a century later. Their story serves as a stark reminder of the desperate lengths people can go to in desperate times. Bonnie and Clyde remain, in death as in life, unforgettable.